What's up, everyone? I'm back, and if you're new here, I'm Elle, and I host this channel, and I will be giving a channel update at the end of this video, so if you're interested in what I'll be doing with this channel, then stay to the end. We're going to start this new series, which is called Murder on the Mic. So let's just start with our first episode.
40 Whiting Street on the balcony.
140, stay on the phone with me.
Ex-boyfriend just stabbed me to death.
Oftentimes we hear of cases that could have been prevented, cases where police dropped the ball, where a victim tried to get help, and where harm was avoidable. Today's episode is one of those cases. Not only will this case infuriate you, but it will really show the negligence of the police when it comes to domestic matters and stalking. Today's case is about 25-year-old grad student named Tiana Notice. Tiana was a young, dedicated, brilliant woman who came from a loving and supportive family. She had graduated from the University of Hartford with a degree in political science. She was said to be a straight-A student whose family never doubted her successful future she had ahead of her. Tiana was so brilliant and driven, in fact, she finished her high school degree at Fitchburg State College. Tiana's family said that she was always an artistic child who loved music and wrote endless poems, and that followed through into her adulthood. Unfortunately, all of this would come crashing down February 14th, 2009, when her crazy stalker ex-boyfriend ended her life way too soon. Tiana had gotten out of a serious 5-year relationship with her college sweetheart, and she was living as a single woman in Plainville, Connecticut, with plans to finish her master's degree when she met James Carter II online. James was roughly 29 years old, I believe, and he boasted himself as an insurance executive. Tiana's father recalled that, quote, he was so well-to-do, and he's got his own house and stuff like that, so he presented well, end quote. While her mother said that she knew as soon as she saw his photo that she didn't like him, calling it her mother's intuition. Regardless of her mother's opinion, Tiana decided to date James, letting him know that she had pretty recently come out of a long-term relationship, so she wasn't really wanting to rush into things. She wanted to take it slow. Though she was more interested in slow and steady, James went out of his way to spoil her and buy her affection. He allegedly bought her a new cell phone and even paid for new tires for her car. He was really playing the part of the perfect man. And this seemed to work, because the couple dated for roughly 6 months before Tiana found out some news that would change her mind about this guy and ultimately end her life. Tiana had found out that James had to serve a 5-month jail sentence for DV on an ex-girlfriend, and found out that her new boyfriend James had a rap sheet with violent crimes and assault. Being the strong woman that she was, Tiana broke it off with James, but he was unwilling to let her go. James started stalking Tiana, calling, messaging, and showing up places where she was, even if she was with her friends. And I'm talking like everywhere, like grocery shopping, out to eat, like didn't matter. Tiana was forced to take out a restraining order on James to try to prevent his obsessive behavior, but this threw James into a desperate and petty rage. James retaliated by trying to get a restraining order on Tiana, stating that she had assaulted him and damaged his vehicle, all of which Tiana denied, and she said that she was only ever physical with him in a loving or adoring way, except for the times where she was essentially trying to get away from James. But she was never actually combative. After James's accusations, he then began to email threats such as, quote, trust me, baby girl, you're going to lose everything. God is my witness. Punishment is on the way, so be prepared. You will have bad luck, you hear me? Remember this email when karma bites you in the ass, end quote. Basically throwing a fit like a teenager, high on Mountain Dew and raging hormones with a keyboard. Unfortunately, these were not empty threats. James denied sending emails saying that his ex-girl or whatever named Jessica Banderas, who never actually existed, had access to his email address, which was just a bunch of bullshit. Tiana wasn't giving up, though. She went and filed a complaint to the police department saying that he was breaking the restraining order, but the police did not do anything. In fact, they had the audacity to tell her that these emails are not even threatening. Which, threatening or not, he was ordered by law not to contact her. So, with these lack of repercussions for his actions, he obviously continues to stalk and threaten Tiana, and she reports all of this to the police. Her mother said, quote, I didn't know why they didn't take my daughter seriously. She went and visited the police station 33 times in 6 weeks, end quote. One of those times, the police department didn't even believe that she had a restraining order and told her that she needed to have a copy faxed over from the police department where she had originally made the order of protection, because this particular police department was in the city she worked at, which was 30 minutes away from the one she had originally filed at. So just to reiterate, that was 33 times in 6 weeks that she reported a violation of a restraining order. That's 33 times the police could have intervened and decided not to. This isn't the case of a woman who's going back and forth, whose neighbors are calling the cops and she's denying it, which is what cops complain of, right, is that the person will always go back to the abuse. This was not the case. She was a woman who's actively seeking help and actively being denied. So the crazy cycle of obsession continued. Her mother said it was so bad that, quote, she was in her car crying hysterically. She says, "Mom, you wouldn't believe these people. They treated me like dirt. They didn't even believe anything I told them. They thought I was lying. One of the officers accused me of having a fake restraining order." Her mother continued to say, "Then I spoke with Sergeant that said, 'Oh, nothing's going to happen to your daughter.' He snarled at me, and I'm like, 'Look, I don't want my daughter to become another statistic. And I'm telling you now, if anything happens to my daughter, you better move to another planet.'" Shortly after this, Tiana's car gets vandalized in the apartment parking lot. Her father remembers her texting and saying, quote, "Dad, my tires were slashed on my car," end quote. The police once again turned her away when she reports this, saying that there's no proof that it's James. So her father comes over and installs a camera that points to the parking lot where she parks her vehicle. And her father go over some self-defense strategies and try to equip her to handle this escalating situation, which should have never gotten this bad in the first place, with all the evidence and priors against James. But unfortunately, this police department was ignoring Tiana and her family's pleas for help. The next night, there was a letter pinned to Tiana's front door that states, quote, "Tiana, forgive me. I never cheated on you. And if you don't believe me, read Psalms 32. Please, if I am lying, may God take my life. I never ever cheated. Forgive me for everything else I have done." End quote. What have you done? Maybe slash her tires? Tiana once again goes and reports this to the police. Unfortunately, when Tiana checks the footage from the camera her dad installed, the tape had run out. The next day is Valentine's Day. Tiana and her best friend go out and get a new tape with a longer running length to hopefully catch James stalking her, so that they have some proof for the police. Later the same day, she finds more emails that James sent. One that said, quote, "God told me to write you, so please don't tell the cops about this, T. I'm going through a life or death situation, and you are the only one I can talk to. You ever been close to death or think you're going to die? I'm going crazy. My dad said he had a dream that our neighbor gave us 2 tombstones at our house. Please call me." End quote. So Tiana once again goes to the police, but this time she has the new emails, so she prints them off and brings them with her. The police are basically like, "Okay, cool, this is enough to pick him up," and arrest him finally. And she's obviously super happy that her living nightmare is going to be over. However, the police give James a call, essentially alerting him to the report of the email. You know, the one he said, "Don't tell the cops about."
This is James?
Yes.
James Carter Jr.?
Yep.
Hi, James. I got to talk to you about an email that you sent.
What about it? I didn't send an email.
And they say they're investigating it and that if he's deemed to be violating the order, he will be arrested.
I would never violate the restraining order. I know this full restraining order, and I moved on, so I'm letting you guys know that. So.
All right.
This triggers James into a violent rage. Tiana's family suggests that she stay away from her apartment until he is arrested, and though she agrees, she wants to go and collect some of her personal belongings from the apartment. You know, toothbrush and some laundry. Meanwhile, James is enraged and hiding near her door, waiting for her. When approaching her apartment, James leaps out with a knife on the unsuspecting Tiana and starts violently attacking her. Tiana was stabbed viciously, roughly 20 times in her chest and torso. The knife was plunged so deeply into her chest that it penetrated her heart 2 times. James runs off, covered in her blood, and leaves her to die alone in a puddle of her own blood. This is the most disgusting thing you could do to somebody that you supposedly love. Not only did he disappoint her and sort of break her heart with lies and deceit, but then he literally stabbed her in the heart and left her to die alone. Tiana, though, this woman is someone who is always fighting for justice, whether it was a nonprofit group she worked for, the Roosevelt Institution in college. She founded a chapter of that, actually. Her volunteer work on her campus with the Women's Center, or debating injustice in general, the fighter spirit of hers came through one last time, and with her last breaths, Tiana calls 911 to tell the police, quote, "I'm bleeding to death. My ex-boyfriend just stabbed me to death," end quote.
Hello?
I'm bleeding to death.
Where are you?
140 Whiting Street on the balcony.
140, stay on the phone with me.
My ex-boyfriend just stabbed me to death.
Read this.
My ex-boyfriend
140 Whiting.
The strength she has up until her final moments are admirable and not to be forgotten. And this strength is one that she inherited from her parents, who had to see their daughter struggle this whole entire situation, having to identify her on a surgery table where she succumbed to her injuries. And after all of this pain and anguish of losing their daughter, they had the strength and courage to step up and take charge, creating the Tiana Angelique Notice Foundation, where they put pressure on law enforcement and legislation. They started a GPS monitoring program where a GPS is put in place for high-risk abusers, which will alert the victims that their offender is nearing them and give the victims of DV time to act. The family filed a wrongful death suit against the officers who supposedly were supposed to be protecting and serving, and they were awarded $10 million. I'll link their foundation information in the description box below, along with some DV hotlines. Because it's 2022 and we are not going back to abusers. No, we're not. Nobody is. Now, as for that loser James, he was arrested and sentenced to 60 years without the possibility of parole, which sounds super disturbing, I know, but that was the maximum sentence at the time. I'm hopeful he will die alone in a cell, which is exactly what Tiana predicted for him when she wrote about him in a poem after their breakup. The poem said, quote, "An empty house in solitude is how he will spend his days, and I rest assured in knowing I am beautiful, smart, and on my way." End quote. James was such a coward, he couldn't face a breakup like a man and ended up taking the life of someone more worthy to walk this earth than he is. He was such a coward, in fact, that he didn't even show up for sentencing. He couldn't look the family in the face or listen to their impact statements. Tiana's people, on the other hand, they showed up, and about 50 friends and family came to support Tiana, and that show of support is just showing us like what kind of a beautiful community Tiana was a part of. Tiana's family knew that she would serve in justice someday, though they were hopeful that she would become a lawyer or work in politics to change the world. Unfortunately, she didn't get that opportunity. But her family keeps pushing on, and Tiana is the fuel for their fire to fight the fight for justice every day. Because of this courageous and strong woman, there has been a huge shift taking place in Connecticut to prevent DV and protect those who are victims of DV. The story is so incredibly sad, but I was able to swallow the pain and fight through all of that while researching this because of how amazing Tiana and her family are. I do have to say to the police involved, do better. If you take an oath to serve and protect somebody, in this case, you fail not just Tiana, but everyone who tries to do the right thing. And by do the right thing, I mean Tiana had a father and 3 brothers. I'm sure they were all ready to serve their own justice, and could have served justice on James's punk ass. But Tiana was a woman who believed in proper legal justice. She dedicated her whole adult life to becoming educated in it, just to help others. And I wish the police in this were just as educated and dedicated as she was, because it would have saved her life. I hope you guys had a great Valentine's Day and you all stayed safe and felt loved and appreciated. Unfortunately, I was a little late, but I did celebrate Tiana's life while writing this on Valentine's Day, the date of her death anniversary. I hope that you guys learned a lot from this story, and I hope that you can share it with somebody if they are also struggling. And just keep on the police. I mean, honestly, if there's a stalker, just get as much proof as you can and just slap it in their faces, because for some reason, stalkers just get away with way too fucking much. And I hope you guys have a great day, and now I will give you the update to my channel. So my little channel update is that the patient files that I was going to be covering, well, I'm not going to cover them under Asylum Sundays as I originally was going to. That is because those files belong to me and my friend Tammy, who's the host of the podcast Remembering When Letters Lost, and I originally was just assisting her and her co-host Jalori on the behind-the-scenes research of the asylums, but Jalori stepped down when her YouTube channel came monetized, which congratulations to her, but I was asked to then be the co-host, and since Tammy and I will be covering those on her podcast, I didn't find it necessary to do it on here as well. So I might be uploading those podcasts to this channel, but she has a separate YouTube channel for that if you want to check that out. I will link it below as well. I might also be using this channel if I ever end up like giving myself creative space to work on my body art and stuff, so but I'm not sure if I'll be doing that. I will definitely be doing Murder on the Mic and keeping up with the true crime, since I've already mostly covered true crime on here anyway, so I hope you guys enjoy that and stick around, but if not, I totally understand. I'll catch you on Instagram. Bye! Frickin' train. If it's not the train, it's the dogs. If it's not the dogs, it's the kid. If it's not the kid, it's the dad. If it's not the dad, it's the mom. If it's not the mom and the dad and the kids and the train, it's the neighbors.